From her impressive showing at the first presidential debate to her win at the Iowa Straw Poll, Michele Bachmann has transformed from fringe figure to top-tier candidate. But what do we actually know about the Minnesota Congresswoman? I'm Alexis Garcia with PJTV, and joining me from Washington, D.C. is Ryan Lizza, Washington correspondent with the New Yorker magazine. Ryan's latest piece, Leap of Faith, takes an inside look at Bachmann's political influences. Now, Ryan, thank you so much for being here. And while everyone was focused on the Newsweek cover, the Queen of Rage cover, while your article came out, your piece actually became the topic of conversation for the Bachmann campaign. Why the focus on her religious background?
Well, I think if you read what she has said over the years about what has really formed her, what has influenced her policy and political views, and what is most important in her life, you very quickly reach the inescapable conclusion that her religion is extremely important to her and has been probably the most important thing in forming her philosophically and intellectually, and it's something that she has talked about in speech after speech ever since she got involved with policy and politics back in the 90s. So I don't actually see how you could write about Michele Bachmann without talking about what philosophically formed her, and that leads to her religious views.
Now, you focused on your article on the sect of dominionism. We've seen it come up, especially with Rick Perry entering the race. Can you talk a little bit about what that's about, and is it really a plot for domination?
No, and look, dominionism, it's one of those terms that people it's one of those terms that has been used by other people studying groups of people on the Christian conservative right. And so a lot of people who the term applies to don't like it and don't use it themselves. I'd be surprised if Michele Bachmann knew what it meant, frankly. But there is an important intellectual history that uses a certain verse from the Bible when God told Adam to have dominion over the world. And that verse is very important. And there are various schools of thoughts that flow from a reliance on that verse. Francis Schaeffer talked about it. Rushdoony, a much more controversial figure, talked about it. In the modern era, someone I wrote about in the piece, Nancy Pearcey, is a very important influence on Michele Bachmann. She has written about it, and she uses the verse from Genesis to talk about the cultural mandate, that your Christianity should not be something that you just do on Sundays in church, but that you should apply a biblical worldview to all parts of your life, whether you're a dentist, a politician, whatever it is. And so, I think perhaps this phrase dominionism, because it means different things to different people, it can sometimes obscure more than it clarifies. But the basic insight here is probably, as Pearcey explains it, that your religion is important not just on this one day of the week, but that it is a worldview, that you need to take the Bible and apply it to all parts of your life. And that is something that Michele Bachmann has talked about over and over in her speeches, most often when she's talking to church groups. And it's very important to understanding her, whether you call it dominionism or you just call it her worldview.
Now, you said she's obviously talked about it over and over. She's cited these people multiple times, but in your article, it sounded like she was hesitant to continue this conversation with you. Do you think she's probably playing down her beliefs to appeal to a nationwide audience?
Well, when she talks to church audiences, and she was doing that up until very recently, she does talk about this stuff, and she talks about religious influences. She talks about Francis Schaeffer, for example. But I think just electorally, that's not the group that she's going after right now. She's much more interested in talking about economic issues right now. You remember when we were on her campaign plane together and with her in Iowa and New Hampshire and South Carolina, she was much more focused now on the economic conservatives. And she's trying to broaden her base. She's trying to expand beyond just the social conservatives who know everything they need to know about her. And so I think that's partly why my 20-minute interview with her got cut short. But I think that she also, to give you a little bit of insight into that interview, she was just coming off the House floor. She had just voted against the debt ceiling. And I don't think she was quite in the frame of mind to have a sort of deep philosophical discussion with me about some of this stuff. So that may have been what rattled her a little bit as well.
It was interesting because when we were on her announcement tour trip, she did kind of stick to the main themes, but she also seemed to try to tailor her message. And we had even asked some of the staff, do you like when she speaks off the cuff? And she has been the victim of some misstatements like this. Take a look.
Well, what I want them to know is, just like John Wayne was from Waterloo, Iowa, that's the kind of spirit that I have too.
Before we get started, let's all say happy birthday to Elvis Presley today. Happy birthday!
And of course, it wasn't his birthday, it was the anniversary of his death. But I mean, do you think that these are the type of gaffes that the media should be focused on, or did you find some more substantive issues, holes in her biography during your research?
Oh, look, it's not easy running for president, and anyone who does any public speaking at all knows that it's really easy to make mistakes when what you do for a living is talk, and that's what you do as a presidential candidate. You get up in front of audiences and you talk a lot. So, you gotta, and I personally believe that the press overemphasizes the gaffe in modern politics. But having said all that, she frankly is a little looser with the facts than a lot of modern candidates who are at her level. And, these campaigns are, as one of the political consultants recently said, they're MRIs of the soul. You can't get away with getting your facts wrong when you're running for president. And so I think the reason it's become a little bit more of an issue with her than some of the other candidates is, frankly, she gets more stuff wrong. And so, yeah, listening to her stump speeches, if you were to fact check every single one, and watching her public statements over the years, I did catch some places where she's not been 100% accurate. I think one of the most significant ones to me was part of her biography is that she sort of stumbled into politics. She showed up at this nominating convention in Minnesota and just decided to run against this moderate Republican. I'd always believed that. I'd seen it reported in many places. But what I found out, actually, is that a year before she went to that nominating convention, she'd been talking about running against this moderate Republican, and for a good reason. He was standing in the way of legislation that she thought was really important. So look, that may seem like a small thing, but it's become very central to her political biography. So if she's going to sort of reach the next level, now that she's won the Iowa Straw Poll, now that she's a serious candidate, that's the place where she probably has the most homework to do, is being extremely careful with factual missteps, because the press now is sort of primed, and her opponents are primed to pounce on her if she gets anything wrong.
Now, you talk about taking it to the next level, and we've seen with Rick Perry getting into the race, her numbers are actually starting to go down. He's actually taking the lead in Iowa. Do you see, with him getting in,
Yeah.
Palin could wake up September 3rd, she can jump in the race. Do you see a path forward to the nomination for her?
I think it's tough. The biggest hit to her numbers is not just the top line, who would you vote for? The biggest hit has been her approval rating. She entered this race with just golden approval numbers, where people didn't have a lot of information about her, but what they knew about her, they liked. And Gallup has been consistently studying this with a high degree of detail. And her most recent numbers have really plunged. She's got a lot more people who say they wouldn't vote for her under any circumstances, much higher disapproval. And that comes with being, with being a controversial figure, with being further out on the right, even in the Republican Party. And so that's where she probably has some more homework, and that's probably her biggest threat right now, is that she's at that place where voters are now not just looking for who they're going to date. Not just Republicans are looking for a candidate, not just who says what they believe in their soul, but they're looking for someone who can beat Barack Obama. And so as electability becomes more important than just being a rock-solid conservative, she's got to convince those voters that, yeah, if she wins this nomination, she could actually beat Obama. And I think Perry's stolen a lot of voters who are worried about that. They see this guy as the longest-serving governor. They see a successful economic record in Texas. And so the electability, and he seems to be reliably conservative, so a lot of Republican voters are moving his way.
Well, Ryan, thank you so much for joining us. And what's the next profile we can look forward to?
I don't know yet. I don't know. I'm open to any suggestions. So have your viewers follow me on Twitter at Ryan Lizza and tell me what I should write about next.
You can catch Ryan's piece, Leap of Faith, by clicking on over to thenewyorker.com. For PJTV, I'm Alexis Garcia.